My name is Elliot Grant. I'm 34 years old, and 3 months ago, I sat alone in a fluorescent hospital waiting room while my little girl was in surgery and not a single member of my family showed up. The nurse glanced at me with that look people reserve for stray dogs, pity and confusion wrapped in silence. My phone buzzed once, a message from my father. For 1 second, I thought it was concern. It wasn't. It said, "Can you send 5 grand for your brother's wedding suit?" I stared at the screen, numb, realizing this wasn't just neglect. It was erasure. But what they didn't know was I don't break quietly. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most. Because this isn't just a story about money or family. It's about what happens when the good son finally stops apologizing and decides to fight back. I grew up in a house where silence was louder than shouting. My father, Richard Grant, was a retired Air Force sergeant who believed emotions were a form of weakness. My mother, Helen, mastered the art of soft cruelty, the kind that came dressed in compliments and backhanded grace. And then there was Nathan, my younger brother, the golden one. He didn't have to earn love. It was handed to him like a family heirloom. I used to think maybe I was too quiet, too serious. Maybe that's why my parents never looked at me the way they looked at him. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 10. I had just won first place in the regional science fair with a model I'd built from scrap metal and broken toy motors. I spent weeks soldering those pieces together, fingers burnt, desk covered in glue stains. That night, when I showed it to my parents, my dad took one look and said, "Interesting, but it won't make you a man." Then he turned to Nathan, who had just learned a magic trick from YouTube, and said, "Now that's something people actually want to see." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. It sank somewhere deep and stayed there. Years later, at 19, when my grandfather passed away, he left something behind, a trust fund for me, to the grandchild who values integrity and work more than applause. I didn't understand what it meant then, but I remembered how his hand shook when he gave me that letter. He said, "Keep this safe, Elliot. Don't let anyone use it for things you don't believe in." Of course, my parents immediately volunteered to help manage it until I was older. I didn't argue. I thought they knew better. I thought they were family. College was supposed to be my escape. I got into Oregon State with a partial scholarship in computer engineering. I was ready to build something of my own until Dad accidentally missed signing one of my financial aid documents. The scholarship vanished, and I couldn't afford to stay. He said it was an honest mistake, but I knew better. He didn't want me to leave. "A man doesn't run from his responsibilities," he said. "Stay close to home. Work hard. Earn your keep." So, I dropped out after the first semester and took a job fixing computers at a local repair shop. When I was 24, I met Hannah, a nurse's assistant. She had a laugh that filled every quiet room. For a while, she made me believe I wasn't invisible. We got married in a small courthouse ceremony, no guests, just the two of us and a shaky phone recording. My parents didn't come. My mother said she had a migraine, and my dad said, "You don't need a crowd to make a mistake official." That should have been a sign. 2 years later, Lila was born. 6 pounds, 7 ounces, and more life than I'd ever seen in one tiny human. The first time I held her, she looked up at me with these wide, curious eyes, and I promised her silently, "I will show up, always." Hannah left 6 months later. No fight, no betrayal, no screaming match. Just a note that said, "I'm not meant to be a mother. Don't wait for me." My mom's reaction? Well, that's what happens when you rush things. Good men don't get abandoned. My father didn't even look up from his paper. Those first few years as a single dad were chaos. I worked IT support by day, freelanced fixing security systems at night. Leela grew up on diner pancakes, cartoons, and bedtime stories told between deadlines. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Sometimes I'd take her to my parents' house on weekends, hoping she'd get what I never did, belonging. My mom would smile and say things like, "She's so independent. Poor thing. Reminds me of you." My dad would hand her a coin or two from his pocket, like tossing bread to a pigeon, and go back to his crossword. Nathan, on the other hand, would stroll in with his sunglasses, talking about his new business venture. First it was cryptocurrency, then drop shipping, then eco-luxury dog collars. He lived in the guest house behind my parents' place, rent-free, driving Dad's old truck like he'd earned it. Every failure became an experiment. Every bailout was supporting innovation. I never asked for help, not after the first time. That time was when Leela needed a dental procedure, and I came up short after my car broke down. I swallowed my pride and called Dad, asking for an $800 loan. He made me sign a written agreement with interest. I paid it off early. He still brings it up every Thanksgiving like a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, Nathan once borrowed 10 grand for startup costs. No paperwork, no repayment, just a pat on the back and, "We believe in you, son." The difference wasn't just money, it was worth. Nathan was always the potential. I was always the lesson. Still, I tried to keep peace. I wanted Lila to have grandparents, even if they came with strings attached. Every Christmas, I'd bring her over in her red dress, carrying cookies she'd baked herself. They'd compliment the cookies, post photos with Nathan, and forget to tag us. I pretended not to notice. I told myself she was too young to understand. I was wrong. Kids always understand more than we think. I didn't know it then, but the day she noticed would be the day everything changed. It was a rainy December evening, 2 weeks before her surgery. Leela was coloring on the floor while I reheated leftovers. She looked up and asked, "Daddy, why does Grandpa always talk to Uncle Nate first?" I froze. "He just likes hearing his stories, honey." She nodded slowly, unconvinced. "Do you think he likes mine too?" I smiled. "He should. Yours are better." She laughed, but I saw at the flicker of doubt, the seed I had spent my whole life burying. That night, after she went to bed, I stared at the framed photo on my shelf, Leela holding a paper medal from her school art show. Paint on her cheeks, beaming. I'd sent that photo to my parents months ago. My mom's only reply had been, "Cute. Maybe enroll her in ballet next time. It's more graceful." I deleted the message and went back to work. But somewhere inside, something started to shift. I didn't know it yet, but the day of that surgery would be the day I stopped trying to earn their approval and started preparing for war. The morning of Lila's surgery smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I remember every detail: the squeak of my sneakers on the polished hospital floor, the hum of the vending machine that never quite shut up, the way the nurse looked at me when she realized I was the only one waiting. "Any family coming, Mr. Grant?" she'd asked, soft but hesitant. I smiled the way people do when they're trying not to look broken. "Just me." She gave me that small nod of pity and walked away. The clock above the TV ticked so loudly it made my chest hurt. I kept staring at my phone, expecting a text. Anything. From anyone. I had reminded them 3 times in the family group chat. "Leela's surgery is on the 11th. She's a little nervous, but being super brave. If you can stop by or send a card, it'd mean the world." Not even a thumbs up emoji. 6 hours later, when the doctor finally came out and told me she'd done great, my knees almost gave out. I wanted to tell someone, Dad, Mom, anyone, that she was okay. But there was no one to call. I sat in the waiting room, holding a paper cup of cold coffee, watching other families hug and cry and celebrate. When Lila woke up, groggy but smiling, she whispered, "Did Grandma come?" I swallowed hard. "Not yet, sweetheart. Maybe tomorrow." She nodded, clutching her stuffed bunny tighter. 3 days later, while I was making mac and cheese for her, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped, thinking maybe it was Mom checking in. Instead, the message glowed across the screen. "Can you wire $5,000 to help Nathan buy his wedding suit? We'll pay you back later." I stared at it, spatula frozen midair. No mention of Lila, no "how's she doing?" No acknowledgement that they'd missed the surgery. Just a casual request, like I was their personal ATM. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to. That night, after Leela went to bed, I logged into every joint account I'd ever shared with them. When she was born, my parents had convinced me to list them as emergency co-signers, just in case something ever happens. I revoked every access, every backup contact, every permission. Then, out of something between sarcasm and self-preservation, I opened Venmo and sent my father exactly 25 cents. The note said, "Buy him a tie." I laughed once, sharp and humorless, then closed the app. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Sharp. Mom, first, then Dad, then Nathan. I didn't pick up. The voicemails came one after another, each one colder than the last. Mom's voice, trembling with practiced concern. "Honey, your father said something about a Venmo joke." "Caleb, oh sorry, Nathan was really hurt. Call us back, okay? Then dads, don't know what kind of games you're playing. Elliot, but this isn't how family behaves. That word family hit me like a slap. Because to them, family was a word you used to control people, not care for them. Later that day, Nathan called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was smug, entitled. A tie? You think you're funny? I already told them we're doing Tom Ford, bro. You can't spot me? After everything mom and dad did for you? After all they've done? I wanted to throw the phone. But instead, I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. The quiet was deafening. That weekend, I scrolled through old messages in our family group chat. Photos of Nathan's failed startups, mom's church bake sales, dad's golf outings. Then I found my own texts, Leela's art, her school recital invitations, her birthday pictures. All met with single-word replies. Nice. Cute. Maybe next time. One thread stopped me cold. It was from last spring, when Leela had her first violin recital. I'd bought her a used violin off Craigslist and sat through weeks of screeching practice. The night of the performance, she stood on that stage in a second-hand dress, bow shaking in her tiny hand, and played, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. She was so proud she cried afterward. I had invited everyone. No one came. That same night, Nathan posted on Instagram from some rooftop bar downtown. The caption said, "Family always supports your dreams." I guess he just forgot which family counted. A month later, his wedding invitations arrived cream cardstock, gold lettering, wax seal. My name printed neatly, Elliot Grant plus guest. No mention of Lila, no box for children, just me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. So I called my cousin Rachel, who's known for never sugarcoating. She hesitated before saying, "Oh, your mom told everyone it's adults only. She said she doesn't want the ceremony disrupted." Disrupted? I asked. She didn't mean it like that, Rachel said quickly, but I could hear the guilt in her voice. You know how your mom gets. Yeah. I knew exactly how my mom got. I didn't tell Lila. I couldn't. She'd been so excited about wearing a flower dress and dancing with her uncle. Instead, I RSVP'd no and said nothing. 2 weeks later, Mom called again. "Honey, we really want you there," she said. "Nathan even asked if you'd make a toast. Let's not let little misunderstandings ruin such a special day." Little misunderstandings. I hung up without replying. That night, I texted them both. I kept it polite, restrained. I won't be attending the wedding. Excluding Leela was hurtful. She's family. If that's not how you see it, then I have nothing else to contribute. 10 minutes later, Dad replied. Just one sentence. "Stop making everything about your kid." I read it until the screen dimmed. Everything in my life was about my kid. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every dollar. And now, he'd reduced her to a nuisance. I didn't sleep that night. My mind replayed every little insult, every time they'd made me feel small, every way they'd reminded me I was the wrong son. By dawn, I wasn't angry. I was awake. When Lila woke up that morning, she found me at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, bank statements, trust fund documents, old tax forms. She climbed onto my lap and asked, "Are we in trouble?" I kissed the top of her head. "No, sweetheart. We're just making things right." Because that was the moment I realized this wasn't about money or forgiveness anymore. It was about rewriting the story they'd been telling my whole life. They thought they could erase me. They forgot I build systems for a living, and systems always leave logs. The silence that followed my last message to them didn't last long. It never does with people who thrive on control. By the next week, the whispers had already started. It began with my Aunt Linda leaving a voicemail that sounded like she was balancing guilt and obligation in the same breath. "Sweetheart," she said, "your parents are really hurt. They said you refused to bring Leela to the wedding because of religious differences, that you didn't want her exposed to unmarried people living together." I nearly dropped my phone. Religious differences? I hadn't stepped foot in a church since college. It was a lie so absurd it almost felt strategic. Linda continued, "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But, honey, these grudges, they don't end well. She's your mother. She wasn't wrong. But she wasn't right either. It wasn't a grudge. It was a boundary. And in my family, boundaries were treated like betrayal." By the time I got home from work that night, my phone was flooded with texts from cousins, each one a version of the same thing. What did you say to Grandma? Heard you're causing drama again. You're better than this. Elliot, I wasn't sure which part hurt more, the lies, or how easily everyone believed them. 2 days later, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize. Anonymous. The sender field read. The subject line said, "You should see this." Attached was a scanned document, an internal withdrawal record from the Grant Family Trust. It showed a wire transfer 2 years prior, signed by my father, $25,000 to Nathan Grant, business development. My hands went cold. The trust was supposed to be untouched until Leela turned 18. My grandfather's only rule was that it couldn't be used for ventures of risk. And now, staring at this record, I realized my parents had not only ignored that they'd done it behind my back. The email ended with one line. "You didn't hear this from me, but you deserve to know." I sat there for almost an hour, scrolling through old memories in my head, trying to match this betrayal with a timeline. It lined up perfectly with Nathan's luxury pet accessory startup, the one that folded in 6 months, the one my parents bragged about funding because family supports family. I printed the document and slipped it into a manila folder labeled evidence. It felt both ridiculous and terrifying to write that word, but I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. This was theft of trust, of legacy, of everything my grandfather had believed in. When I called my father, I didn't plan on confrontation. I just wanted the truth. He answered on the third ring. "Elliot." His tone was clipped, military cold. "I found something," I said. "A withdrawal from the trust. $25,000 to Nathan. Signed by you." Silence. Then, "Watch your tone, son." "I'm not accusing," I said. "I'm asking. You don't need to understand how family finances work. That's my daughter's future you dipped into." He chuckled low, dismissive. "We used that money to help your brother get on his feet. You wouldn't want him homeless, would you? That wasn't your decision to make." He exhaled sharply. "This is why no one talks to you anymore. You twist everything into a fight. You think you're the only one who's ever sacrificed?" I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "No," I said quietly. "Just the only one who pays the price." He hung up. The next day, I got a hand-delivered envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled in my mother's perfect handwriting. Inside was a letter written in her usual mix of guilt and control. "Elliot, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this needs to stop. You're poisoning Lila with your bitterness. Your father and I have always tried to protect this family, but you seem determined to destroy it. You're dishonoring the Grant name. If you continue down this path, you'll have no one left." At the bottom, she signed it. "With love, Mom." Love. As if love could be stapled to manipulation and mailed first class. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in the same folder as the trust document, and sat down on the couch. The living room was quiet except for the sound of Leela humming from her bedroom. She was singing a song she learned in music class, her voice soft but sure. It hit me then every time they hurt me, she was nearby. Every insult, every lie, every silence, I'd absorbed it so she wouldn't have to. But now, their cruelty had bled into her world, and that I couldn't allow. The next morning, she found me at the kitchen table again, sorting through papers. "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad?" she asked. I hesitated. "Maybe, but that's not your fault." "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart." I smiled weakly. "They just forgot how to love the right way." She looked down, tracing the wood grain of the table with her finger. "Can we love better?" My throat tightened. "Yeah," I whispered. "We can." I didn't know it yet, but that question, 6 words from a 6-year-old, was the fuse that lit everything that followed. The storm didn't come all at once. It crept in through whispers, through screens, through the small ways my family had always preferred to wound. It started when Rachel, my blunt, no-nonsense cousin, called me late one night. "Elliot," she said quietly, "I didn't want to get involved, but you need to know what they're saying." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Your mom told everyone you refused to bring Leela to the wedding because you said the marriage was immoral, that you didn't want her around, bad influences." I laughed out loud, but it wasn't amusement, it was disbelief sharpened into something bitter. "That's insane." "I know," Rachel said quickly, "but they're saying it in front of people. Aunts, uncles, everyone. And they believe it." "Caleb's sorry." Nathan didn't correct them. For a moment, the world went quiet. I could hear only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Leela breathing softly in her sleep down the hall. My parents hadn't just lied, they'd rewritten me. They said you sent that 25 cents to mock them, Rachel continued. That you cut them off to punish your brother for being more successful. They're painting you as the villain. I finished for her. Rachel sighed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thanked her and hung up, but my hands were shaking. For years, I'd played the role of the reasonable one, the peacekeeper, the forgiver, the one who let things slide for the sake of family. And what had that earned me? A caricature, a villain in their narrative. I didn't sleep that night. I opened my laptop, stared at the folder labeled evidence, and began scanning every old file connected to the trust. That's when I saw its small, easily missed footnotes in the records. Tiny monthly withdrawals, always under $5,000, always signed by my father back when he still had co-signer privileges. Over 6 years, it added up to more than $27,000. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the money. It was the intent. They'd siphoned away my daughter's future, one quiet family emergency at a time. The next morning, my dad called. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Your mother's upset, he said flatly, skipping any greeting. I bet she is, I replied. Tell her to stop lying about me. He snorted. You think you're some kind of hero now? You've always been dramatic. We helped you for years. You wouldn't even have your career if it weren't for us. I almost laughed. You mean when you sabotaged my scholarship and called it discipline? When you loaned me $800 and never let me forget it? His voice rose, sharp and cold. Watch your mouth. We raised you. We made sacrifices. Yeah, I said. You sacrificed honesty, fairness, and decency. There was silence on the line, heavy and dangerous. Then he said, You're hysterical, just like your mother says. Always emotional. You need to grow up. I hung up before he could say another word. That night, my mother came to my apartment. She didn't call first. She just knocked 3 sharp taps like a summons. I didn't open the door. She knocked again, harder. Elliot, she said, voice trembling. You're making a mistake. Whatever you think you've found, it's not what it looks like. Your father did what was best for everyone. For Nathan. I stood behind the door, heart pounding. And what about Lila? Was stealing from her best for everyone too? There was a pause, long enough that I thought she'd left. Then she said softly, You're letting that little girl ruin you. That was the first and only time I ever screamed at her. She's not ruining me, she's saving me. The silence on the other side of the door stretched until I heard footsteps fading down the hall. A moment later, a paper envelope slid under the door. Her handwriting again. I waited until I was calm enough to read it. Inside, the letter said, Elliot, this obsession with fairness is going to destroy you. Families are built on forgiveness, not rules. You're dishonoring us by airing private matters. If you don't stop, we'll have no choice but to remove you from the trust completely. This is your last warning. She signed it, Love, Mom, again. The word love looked like a knife. I tore the letter in half, then in quarters, then into confetti. That weekend, Leela saw something she shouldn't have. My mother had posted a photo of Nathan on Facebook, him in a new tailored suit, standing with my parents under a floral arch. The caption read, Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Our son, our light, our legacy. Hashtags, number family first, number only son we proud of. I didn't even notice until Leela tugged my sleeve, holding my phone in her small hands. Daddy, she said softly, why did Grandma write that? I thought I was part of the family. My stomach twisted. I crouched beside her, trying to find words that wouldn't break her heart. Sometimes, I said carefully, people forget what being family really means. She blinked up at me, eyes glassy but steady. Can we forget them too? That's when I realized it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about protection. That night, I sat at my desk until dawn. I gathered every document, every email, every voicemail. I backed them up to a secure drive, labeled it Grant, Case, and emailed copies to Gavin Ross, an old college friend turned financial attorney. My message was short. Need help proving misuse of a trust. No drama, just facts. His reply came within the hour. Bring everything Monday. Let's clean this up. When I shut my laptop, the sky outside was turning pink. Lila was still asleep, clutching her stuffed bunny, her small chest rising and falling in peace. I watched her for a long time, memorizing that quiet. Because I knew what came next would be anything but quiet. I wasn't just done playing their game. I was about to rewrite the rules. The mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 9 sharp, in a downtown office I hadn't stepped foot in since my grandfather's funeral. I barely slept the night before. My dining table was covered in folders, spreadsheets, and printed emails, 6 years of evidence reduced to paper and ink. Lila had drawn a little sun in the corner of one page and written in crooked crayon letters, "You can do it, Daddy." I folded that one and slipped it into my jacket pocket. When I walked into Mr. Calloway's office, the air smelled of old paper and lemon polish. The same green banker's lamp I remembered from my childhood sat on his desk, humming faintly. My parents were already there. My mother, Helen, wore her favorite navy blazer, the one she used to wear for church committees, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My father, Richard, sat rigid, arms crossed, jaw tight, his silence loud enough to fill the room. "Elliot," Mr. Calloway greeted warmly, though his tone carried the weight of the situation. "Thank you for coming." I nodded and took my seat across from my parents. Between us sat the folder marked evidence. I could feel my heartbeat pulsing through it. The mediation began calmly, almost rehearsed. Mr. Calloway outlined the purpose: to discuss the handling of the Grant Legacy Trust and ensure all parties were aligned on its intended use. My parents nodded along, pretending civility. My mother spoke first, all honeyed words and half-truths. "We're deeply concerned," she said, turning to Mr. Calloway. "Not me. Elliot has misunderstood the family's intentions. We've always managed this trust responsibly, just as his grandfather wanted." My father added, "The boy's gotten emotional. He's trying to make this about punishment instead of gratitude." Boy. At 34 years old, I was still the boy. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "This isn't about emotion. It's about documentation and respect." I slid the folder across the table. "You took $25,000 to fund Nathan's business, then another $27,000 in smaller withdrawals over 6 years, all without consent. That's not family support. That's theft." My mother's smile faltered. "We were borrowing," she said quickly. "Your brother needed help getting started. You've always had a steady job, Elliot. You didn't need it the same way he did." I looked at her. And Lila? Did she not need her future? Mr. Calloway cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "I've reviewed the audit reports and can confirm the withdrawals were made under Mr. Richard Grant's authority prior to the cosigner revocation. While technically not criminal, they do violate the intent of the trust." My father finally spoke, his tone clipped and cold. "That trust was meant to uplift the family, not hoard wealth for one branch of it. Your grandfather would have wanted us to help Nathan. He did want to uplift the family," I said quietly, pulling a small brown envelope from my folder. "That's why he left this letter with me." Mr. Calloway looked up, surprised. "You found it?" I nodded and unfolded the yellow paper. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. I read aloud. "To my grandson Elliot, integrity will always outlast inheritance. I entrust this fund to you, not just for financial security, but to protect what truly matters: our family's name, built on honesty, fairness, and work. Should anyone misuse this trust, you have both the right and the duty to defend it, not for yourself, but for those who come after." The room went silent except for the ticking clock. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. My father's face darkened, the vein in his temple pulsing. "You're twisting his words," he said. "He didn't mean for you to attack your own parents." I looked straight at him. "No, he meant for me to stop you from destroying everything he built." He leaned back, sneering. "You think you're the hero here? You're pathetic. A single father, living off pity, turning your daughter into your excuse for failure. That did it." For a split second, I almost lunged across the table. But instead, I took out the folded paper from my pocket, the one with the sun and crayon letters. I placed it gently in front of them. "She's the reason I'm sitting here. The reason I won't let this slide. You talk about legacy, but you've forgotten what it means. It's not money. It's not appearances. It's showing up." My mother's lip quivered. "Elliot, please." "No," I said softly but firmly. "You didn't show up for her surgery. You didn't even call. Then you lied to the entire family about me, and after all that, you still thought you could take what wasn't yours and walk away clean." Mr. Calloway shifted slightly, eyes on my parents. "For the record, he said. Elliot's actions are within full legal right. His revocation of cosigner privileges is valid, and given the breach of fiduciary intent, he now holds sole management of the trust moving forward. My mother inhaled sharply. You can't mean. He raised a hand. It's already processed. My father's composure cracked. You ungrateful. Stop. I stood, palms flat on the table. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from her future. My voice shook, but not from fear, from release. And you're right about one thing, Dad. I am emotional, because for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid to be. The room hung in silence. Even the ticking clock seemed to pause. My mother looked up at me, eyes glassy, voice small. You'll regret this, Elliot. Family isn't supposed to go to war. I met her gaze. You started the war the day you decided loyalty only counted when it served you. Then I turned to Mr. Calloway. We're done here. He nodded once. Understood. I gathered my papers, slid the letter back into the envelope, and tucked Leela's drawing into my jacket again. As I reached the door, my father's voice followed me. You think you've won? He said. I stopped, hand on the knob. No, I said quietly. I've just stopped losing. Then I walked out into the crisp Portland air. For the first time in years, it felt clean. Outside, the city was waking, cars humming, coffee cups clinking, the morning sun catching the glass buildings just right. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing deep, the weight on my chest finally lifting. I didn't smile, not yet, but I felt something close like peace beginning to take root. They'd taken enough from me. From Lila. From the name Grant. Now, I was taking it back. A week after the mediation, the storm went quiet. Too quiet. No more phone calls. No more messages. No more family. Just silence, the kind that used to suffocate me but now felt cleansing. Lila and I spent the next few days at the little lake cabin Morgan had found for us months ago. It was old, smelled faintly of cedar and rain, but it had a porch that overlooked still water and mornings full of light. She drew pictures while I worked on my laptop finishing the paperwork to transfer the trust management officially under my name. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like a funeral. On the third night, while Lila was asleep in the loft, I sat by the window with a cup of black coffee gone cold. My inbox pinged a new message from Anonymous. Subject line: You're not the only one they lied to. The email contained a PDF, a scanned contract showing another withdrawal, this time a larger one, $40,000, labeled Consulting Services, Nathan Grant Holdings, authorized by both my parents. Date: 3 months ago. That was after the trust had already been flagged for review. I felt my pulse quicken. They hadn't stopped. Even after being caught, they tried to drain what was left. But what caught my eye wasn't the money. It was the footer, a clause I'd never seen before. In the event of misappropriation, all assets of the Grant Legacy Trust shall be reallocated to the named successor, the legal heir of Elliot Grant. My breath caught. Lila's name, her full legal name. I stared at it for a long moment, the coffee trembling in my hand. The legacy wasn't mine to protect anymore. It was hers. And now, the law said so. The next morning, I drove back into Portland. The air smelled like wet asphalt and new beginnings. I stopped by the print shop, made copies of the document, and sent one to Gavin Ross with a single note. Confirm and seal this clause. Quietly. He replied 10 minutes later. Already on it. That night, I made one last post public. Simple, sharp. Integrity is the only inheritance worth keeping. The rest, I've already let go. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within hours, it spread through the same social circle that once whispered my name like poison. Morgan texted me, "That's the cleanest revenge I've ever seen." Maybe she was right. Maybe revenge didn't need blood or noise. Maybe it was just truth unshakable in public. Later, as the sun dipped behind the lake, Leela curled up beside me with her sketchbook. "Daddy," she said, "are we good people?" I looked at her, at the small ink smudge on her cheek, the same way her mother used to get when she drew too long. "I don't know if we're good," I said softly, "but we're honest. And that's a start." She nodded, satisfied. Then she pointed at the stars above the dark water. "Can we name one after Grandpa?" I hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Yeah," I said, "but maybe not the one that shines the brightest. Just the one that lasts the longest." And as the ripples on the lake caught the last light, I realized something: revenge wasn't about winning. It was about freeing yourself so completely that their power over you turned to dust. The Grants had lost everything they couldn't buy back. And Lila, she just inherited something they'd never understand. Peace. If you've ever been the one left out, the one who did everything right and still got treated like you were nothing, then you know what this story really means. Family doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes, it's the battlefield you have to walk away from to save yourself. So, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to rebuild your peace from the ashes of your own bloodline, hit like, share this story, and subscribe. Because for people like us, this story isn't over. It's just beginning.